Good evening, everybody. Welcome, Puggers, Puggians, AWS Portsmouth User Group attendees to the next session of the AWS Portsmouth User Group. This evening, we've got the illustrious Kunal. He's been a speaker of ours a couple of times. He gave a deep racer talk at one point, and he's been a valued member and presenter for our community. Thank you, Kunal, for coming out. But before we get started, a couple of different show notes. If you want to get connected with us, please go to awspug.org. The illustrious Mr. Planky has set up a website with all of the links to all of the different things. You can link to us on our Slack channel. You can get an invite from the page. You can tweet to us at AWSPug on Twitter. And please, as always, if you don't have a direct question, mute and make sure that all of the background noises are, in fact, not audible. So again, this evening we're going to talk about AWS services best practices with Kunal. You can find him on Twitter at Kunal732. Feel free to pester him on there. I do relentlessly all the time. And this is the session that we're going to get into. But before we do that, a quick shout out to our sponsors. Thank you to AWS, Manning Publication, O'Reilly, Seaglass Technologies, Liberty Mutual, Great Bay Community College, Green Pages, Rubrik, and MongoDB for supplying us with space, pizza, beer. In times when we've all been able to get together, they've been very generous to us. Yeah, and one day we'll get back to it too. At the end of this session, Kunal has a very special special gift for every attendee that is currently watching. So stay tuned.
You're going to have to fill out the survey to get that gift, though.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Have to fill out the survey. Otherwise, no gifts. All right, Mr. Batra, I have stopped sharing and I have allowed screen share. So please feel free to take over and I'll shut up.
I'm going to start sharing my screen. And like Chris mentioned, there is a special giveaway for everyone who's attending. We'll be having an Oprah moment. So please make sure to fill out that survey and then check underneath your seats. All right, let's get started. Let me just make this full screen. Okay, so in this session, we're going to be talking about security best practices the well-architected way. My name is Kunal Batra. I'm a senior developer advocate here at AWS. If you're not familiar with what a senior developer advocate does, essentially it's just an engineer who helps build awareness and adoption. I've worked on a lot of different developer-focused products so far in my career. Auth0 being one, where specifically focusing on identity and security. So I have a passion for this, as well as another passion of mine is machine learning and computer vision. We're not going to be talking about any of that today. I just always love sharing this at on my slides. On the bottom left, there's a model I built that lets you know whether the garage door is open or closed. By far one of my favorite ones so far. And to the right of that, it's another one that counts how many people are in line at the Shake Shack in Madison Square Park. This was pre-COVID. So if any questions on any of these, feel free to reach out to me. Twitter by far, even as Chris would know, is the best way to get in touch with me. By far the fastest response at Kunal732. And then my email is kbatra@amazon.com. And then just really quickly, before we get into the presentation, one of the things our team is trying to do here as well is collect as much customer feedback as we can on any of our products and bring that in internally. So if there's anything else that comes to mind, whether it's one of the services I'm talking about today or something that you're currently using in your own workloads, and you really want to give feedback and you want to make sure that's heard, definitely take advantage of my email address right over there. And yeah, that will definitely be heard and shared. We are just starting this, so this will be top of the list as well. So again, feel free to take advantage of that. All right, without further ado, let's get into the presentation here and the agenda. The first thing we're going to be doing is talking about the well-architected framework, giving a little bit of history, a little bit of an introduction to that. And then from there, we're going to talk into the 5 different components of that security pillar, right? So IAM, incident response, detective controls, infrastructure protection, data protection as well. So this particular talk that I'm giving here is actually a shortened version of a talk that we've given the company at a couple of different places. So if you want to find that deeper dive talk, that longer version of the talk, I'll put a link at the end of this presentation as well. But let's begin. Okay, so for the well-architected framework, this is a framework that lets you build your architecture and compare against best practices that we have here at AWS. And the 3 links that you see on this slide right now kind of give links to that framework. So the first one is going to take you to a page that we have hosted here locally on AWS. The second one will take you to a bunch of different languages for that specific framework, just in case you want to see it in a different language. That third link, the well-architected labs, this is actually pretty cool. You can take advantage of different types of workshops that we've created here that walks you through different parts of the framework and showcases how you can take advantage of that well-architected framework for your own workloads. Okay, so in the well-architected framework, we have 5 pillars here. And again, essentially this framework helps you just understand the pros and cons of decisions you make while building systems on AWS. The framework showcases architectural best practices for designing and operating secure and cost-effective systems. It also provides a way for you to consistently measure your architectures against the best practices we've seen here while talking to customers and identify areas for improvements. Right now you see 5 pillars over here: operational excellence, security, reliability, performance, efficiency, and cost optimization. Actually, I believe the first 3 or 4 years of the framework, it was only 4 pillars. It wasn't until 2015 where we introduced the 5th one, which was operational excellence. So just a little history here. This slide is a year outdated, as you don't see 2020, but rest assured, we are still customizing this framework. But it started back in 2012, and essentially we were talking with our customers and trying to help them architect solutions and take the best advantage of the AWS cloud. And we wanted to have a way to formalize a lot of those conversations and best practices that we were coming up with our customers. So the first 3 years, 2012 to 2014, the well-architected framework was actually just an internal document for customer-facing roles such as myself, developer advocates or solution architects. And then in 2015, that's when we decided to open that up and publish it as a white paper. That's also when we got feedback and letting us know that these 4 pillars are great, but we do need that operational excellence pillar added to the well-architected framework. And so every year we have this process where we collect data about what's worked for customers, what could be improved to provide clarity, and what should be added or removed. And we release a new version every year. And we released the last one, I believe, July 2020. So this slide is not updated, but it's still going. Okay, and so again, it provides a way for customers to consistently measure their architecture against best practices and identify areas for improvements. It gives our customers the ability to build and deploy faster, lower or mitigate risks, make informed decisions, again, learn best practices. And inside the framework, there's 7 design principles here that you can see listed out. The first one, implement a strong identity foundation. This is just highlighting the idea of implementing with the principle of least privilege and having and enforcing that separation of duties. The next, enable traceability. This just means add the ability to monitor, alert, and audit actions and changes to your environment in real time. Apply security at all layers. The idea here is to think about different aspects of your application. For example, the edge of network, load balancing, every instance of compute service, operating system, application, and code, and make sure you apply security at every layer here. Automate security best practices. This also includes things like creating secure architecture and defining that infrastructure as code in version control templates. Protect data in transit or rest, pretty straightforward. Keep people away from data. So essentially, again, use mechanisms and tools to reduce or eliminate the need for direct access or manual processing of data. And then prepare for security events. So basically just be ready by having incident management and investigation policies and processes if such an event occurs. And we break down the security pillar and those design principles into 5 security components. Again, these are IAM detection, infrastructure protection, data protection, and incident response. And we have tools and services dedicated to each one of these different components here. I will share this presentation afterwards. Feel free to take a screenshot if you want, but these are a lot of the services that align with those components for the security pillar. We're not going to be going through all of these services. We'll talk about a subset of these, but if you want to see more of them, feel free to look at more of these online. We'll cover subsets. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about here is identity and access management. And hopefully everyone here is familiar with IAM. Just in case you're not, it's a key part of it should be a key part of your security program. It ensures only authorized and authenticated users and components are able to access your resources in the way that you intended. So we can see an example of a sample IAM policy over here. You can see in the statement over here, effect, action, and resource. And essentially over here, the effect is what you're trying to allow or deny. Usually you only see allow over here. And then it's corresponding to which action are you trying to allow, right? So in this case, are you trying to, you're gonna allow an S3 list bucket, S3 get object. You can also wildcard these if you want. And it works on a resource, right? So in this case, the resource is gonna be webinar-canal-1, the name of the bucket. An ARN is just an Amazon resource name over here. And then that's for providing policies for users to be able to access, for example, a bucket. You can also provide something similar for services, providing access to different parts of your account, right? So you can provide something called IAM roles for Lambda functions or your EC2 instance to be able to access that S3 bucket. And I wanna just stop over here and just kind of showcase this in the console. This is something that people here might be surprised, but it's a question I get asked a lot, which is how do you actually do this, right? So let me just go to the console over here. And again, if you want to access the console, you have to go to console.aws.amazon.com. And from here, if you want to just access that IAM, you can just quickly search for that. And right now, we're just going to create a quick policy. What you're going to see. The first thing I want to mention here is this is my demo account, AWS Canal demo. So you're going to see that this is not the most secure. This also works well for this presentation to showcase some of the different services that we're going to be seeing. The first thing I want to do over here is create a policy. So let me go ahead and create that policy. There's two different ways to create an IAM policy here. You can use the visual editor or you can just edit JSON. I recommend to really use that visual editor. It just helps with making any sort of simple mistakes that might come into play later. The first thing you're gonna do is choose a service. So I'm gonna try to mimic what we just saw on that slide. So I'm gonna say S3 over here. Click on S3. From here, we're gonna wanna do those two different actions. One is list bucket and the other was get object. So we can see right here, we can just go down a list and say list bucket. And then we wanna get object, right? So we're gonna go and read and click on get object. And then from here, we need to specify a resource. So we're gonna specify the bucket that we want this under. So we're gonna go ahead and, whoops. Let me go to resource here. There we go. We're gonna add a resource over here. And we're gonna give this a name. So this is gonna be webinar-kbatra-1, which is the bucket name that we wanna give access to. And we wanna say give access to any object. We're gonna go ahead and review that policy. We're gonna give it a name. We'll call this Portsmouth S3 policy. And we're gonna go ahead and create that policy. This will create that policy and we can go ahead and search for it. And you can see I've created another one in the past. Let me go ahead and showcase this one over here. So you can see this looks pretty much similar to what we saw in the PowerPoint slide. The only difference really being over here is this line over here, which is not even necessary. So we can go ahead and take that out if need be. But yeah, otherwise, everything else here is pretty much the same. And this particular policy will give access to the webinar kbatra-1 bucket and any of the files in it with the actions for getting it and listing that bucket. So that is a policy. And by the way, this is a casual event, so feel free to just chime in and ask questions at any point.
Hey, can I actually jump in right there? So not a question, but more of a comment about the visual designer. Even if you were using external tools, something like CDK or CFT to deploy your IAM resources, if you're ever having trouble with them, the visual tool can still add value if you click into your deployed resources. Before he added his bucket and object, it basically said, hey, you have 2 warnings on this policy. So I found very often that I might deploy something that has object level access when it needs resource or vice versa. So the visual editor still will show you those warnings, even if you're using infrastructure as code to get those deploys out. So there's still value, even if that's not your primary way of configuring IAM users.
Awesome, thank you. So that was a way to add the policy for your user. But now let's say you want to add a role as well. Let's say you want to make sure that your Lambda function can also access that S3 bucket, right? So the next thing we're going to do is create a role over here. And over here, we're going to go ahead and create a role. We're going to go ahead and say AWS service, Lambda, click on permissions, and we're going to add that policy that we just created, right? So we'll click on Portsmouth. There we go. I was just checking if I was spelling Portsmouth correctly. Click next review. And now I'm not going to actually create this role. This is just going to be a just put some sample name in there just to showcase how you can also add that policy to a role as well. So a Lambda function can access that bucket too. All right, so let me go ahead and get out of this. Just one thing to note over here, again, this is the IAM dashboard. So I was just showcasing how to set the policies and roles. Another thing just to make sure, once you are in this dashboard, a couple of things. One, you can change the way you access your sign-in account over here. You can go ahead and actually customize that name. You can see right now I have it set because this is a demo account for AWS Kunal demo, but you can set this to whatever you want to give to your users for being able to sign in. Make sure to check out the security alerts here as well. Right now it's notifying me that I don't have MFA set up. You can go ahead and set that up as well, and I'll have instructions on how to do that too. Just make sure you don't see any security alerts for your account when you do access this particular dashboard. All right, so let me switch back into my presentation. Okay, so that was IAM. The next thing I want to talk about in terms of that well-architected lens for the security pillar is detective controls, right? And essentially detection enables you to identify a potential security misconfiguration, threat, or unexpected behavior. I feel like a lot of the, in my opinion, a lot of the sexy tools are part of this particular category over here, and we'll go over some of them in a second. One of the things to talk about over here, there's a lot of different types of detection mechanisms. For example, logs from your workload can be analyzed for exploits. But what you can do is establish a set of detection mechanisms at the account level. So in this case, you can use CloudFormation to deploy, one second, let me move this little window with everyone's faces here. Deploy CloudShell with some alerts, GuardDuty, or config. And essentially, CloudShell provides an event history of your AWS account activity. So it includes actions taken through AWS Management Console, SDKs, command line tools, and other services. GuardDuty is a threat detection service that continually monitors for malicious activity, unauthorized behavior to protect your AWS accounts and workloads. We'll be talking a little bit about GuardDuty in a second. AWS config will let you create rules that you can monitor against, as well as automate the remediation against undesired configurations. And with the rules development kit, you can actually deploy those config rules at scale across multiple different AWS accounts and regions. And you can also take advantage of other services to remediate based on that as well. So let's dive a little deeper into this and some of these services. Security Hub. So Security Hub is a single place where you can go and see how you can improve your security and compliance posture. Essentially, it's just a single pane of glass that aggregates information from multiple different services in one place, and you can go ahead and take actions based on that. You just have to turn it on. Again, it starts aggregating results from GuardDuty, Inspector, Macy, also a bunch of different partner solutions as well. And those will all push those findings in an automated way and standardize as well into Security Hub. They also provides insights, which are the most important findings and resources that need to be addressed immediately. And it also provides automated compliance checks via the CIS AWS Foundation benchmark. We'll showcase that in a second. And you can also set automated response remediation actions on specific findings via CloudWatch event rules and targets. And we'll also see that towards the end of this particular section. So I just wanted to quickly showcase how this looks like in one single view. So again, let me just get out of this presentation here. Oh, and this slide right here is just showcasing the next portion of it, how Security Hub also does the automated compliance checks. In this case, it's doing the CIS, Center for Internet Security compliance checks over here. So you can see this is 43 fully automated checks, and it provides best practices as well to help reduce gaps in compliance. So let's go ahead and just go to the console. Sorry, I'm in the console right now. Let's just go Security Hub. You can see it's taking the time in my little demo account here. Okay, so you can see that I'm getting an alert right here. My AWS config is not appropriately enabled in some accounts. On the left-hand side over here, I can go to findings, and we can see different pieces of information here. So you can see that, again, this is a demo account. So this is actually doing a good job of showcasing different alerts that it's finding on this account. You can see on the left-hand side the severity of it. You can also see more information about those particular findings. We can go to insights. These are things that should be addressed, things that it finds the most important. We can also go to the standards. So I just showcased this in that past slide, but we can see that currently 89% failed in this account for that. So this is not doing a good job. So don't be like me in this particular case. Okay, let's switch back to presentation.
Is that 89% failed out of the box, or did you hobble it to make it even more faily?
I did not hobble it. That's straight out of the box.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let me just go to the next slide here. Okay, so the next service I want to talk about is GuardDuty. This is a pretty interesting service. It actually does use a little bit of machine learning in here as well, and we'll talk about that in a second. Essentially, it's really easy to activate. Basically, just a one-click activation. It'll provide you with continuous monitoring of your AWS accounts and resources. It detects two types of threats. So it'll detect known threats, and basically, it'll take feeds of intelligence and be able to detect on the threats it gets from those feeds, as well as unknown threats. So it'll be able to find anomalous behavior and let you know when that happens. And that unknown threat portion of it, this is something that it's not active immediately out of the box. It takes a little time for GuardDuty to understand and monitor your account to be able to understand what that base level is. And then from there, when it sees those anomalous behaviors, it'll notify you. I'm just forgetting off the top of my head for how long that portion is, but you can check out the docs, or I can check it out after this presentation. I'll let you know if anyone's interested. So basically with GuardDuty, it's actually looking at 3 different data sources here: your VPC flow logs, DNS logs, as well as CloudTrail events. It's optimized for consuming large volumes of this information. It does all the heavy lifting. You're not required to turn on any logging. Data is not stored by GuardDuty. It's essentially just pulled from the internal sources, analyzed in memory, and then discarded. GuardDuty only stores the results from the findings that are produced, so your data remains your data. And then just a quick showcase on how this works. Again, you have your data sources here, the VPC flow logs, your DNS logs, CloudTrail events. From there, it detects 2 types of threats. So this is threat intelligence based on the feeds it's seeing. So any sort of command and control activity, your Bitcoin mining over there, also anomaly detection with ML. And then from there, it can go ahead and send that information to Security Hub, put that in an S3 bucket, or you can send that to CloudWatch events to trigger some sort of remediation activity.
Quick question.
Yes.
From this is going back a hot second. DHub9 is asking, how does Security Hub compare to AWS config when it comes to compliance checks?
For Security Hub is just an aggregate. It just aggregates all of the information from different places and showcases you in a single pane of glass. So it's a different, it's just a different, works differently in that case. It's not meant to just give you those compliance checks. It's meant to just view those compliance checks and everything else in one pane of glass.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So GuardDuty now, we just showcased this. So basically, again, it leverages threat intelligence from a couple of different sources. It gets feeds from AWS Security Intel. This is a feed that's currently only available to GuardDuty. It's not public for user-facing to see that. But it'll take advantage of information it gets from that Security Intel feed. It'll take advantage of feeds from APN partners, specifically CrowdStrike and Proofpoint. Then it will also take into account customer-provided threat intel. Just to note that customer-provided threat intel is only for your account. That does not get shared with anyone else. And then it also has the ability to identify malware-infected hosts, anonymizing proxies, cryptocurrency mining pools and wallets, and more. Like I mentioned too, it also has the ability to find unknown threats using ML. It takes some time. Once you activate that feature, it'll then go ahead and kind of get an idea of what your base account is like. From there, when it sees something anomalous, it will go ahead and notify you for that as well. There are different types of classes and categories it's able to see in terms of that behavior. And this is a view on how that screen looks like. You can see on the left over here the different types of findings. You can see when it was last seen. You can see that count column over there as well. So it's not going to scream alerts at you. It's actually going to start aggregating similar types of findings. And then from there, you can go ahead and click on one of those and then get more information. Once you click on it, you're going to see that pane to the right. That's going to give you more information on the severity, the count, also links for the affected resources as well. So a lot of the times, we see our customers also consuming these feeds, not just from the management console, but through an API and through the JSON format as well. And they're doing this so they can consume these alerts through CloudWatch events, which is essentially just an event bus, which will send them onto another service like Lambda to take a certain action. And again, all of these alerts are still aggregated even when you see it through that JSON feed as well. So let's see an example of that. You can see over here in the bottom of the slide, you have GuardDuty. It sees an event. From there, it goes to CloudWatch events, and that will go ahead and trigger a Lambda, which can take some action. The action can be talking to a partner solution, sending some sort of automated response, or doing essentially anything else. And there's an example that we have over here. Let's say you're getting port scanned on HTTP or HTTPS by a malicious IP. When GuardDuty sees this happening from a known bad actor, it'll create a finding, which will then trigger a Lambda function, which will add that to an IP block list in AWS WAF, which will then prevent that actor from getting any more communication. So you can take advantage of this and set some sort of activity. I'm not sure if you guys can hear the sirens in the background. That is a function of me living in New York City.
Yeah, no worries. It's not washing out anything.
Okay, cool. The next service over here, Amazon Detective. So just to rewind here, we spoke about two other services. GuardDuty, this is a threat detection service that continuously monitors for malicious activity, unauthorized behavior to protect your AWS accounts and workloads. Security Hub is that single place that just aggregates, organizes, and prioritizes your finding from multiple services such as GuardDuty. And now with Detective, this is a service I haven't played around with yet, but it simplifies the process of investigating security findings and identifying that root cause. It analyzes trillions of events from multiple data sources and puts that together to really help simplify that investigation portion of this. This is a service that I still need to currently play around with. I believe for some reason, I think internally as an Amazon employee, I have to specifically request access to this particular feature. So not sure why that is. Okay, so that's detective controls. And again, in my opinion, those were a lot of the sexy services I believe we have over here that lets you find out what's going on in your accounts. The next section over here is incident response. So once you find out what's going on, how do you respond to these events? And in this example over here, it just shows GuardDuty as a starting point. You see alerts, and then you can go ahead and respond to that as well. I don't know what's happening outside right now.
Man, something happened. It's gone bananas.
Something happened there. Sorry, guys. So once you find those alerts, you can go ahead and start doing a couple of things. You can start creating playbooks, have game days, and having that combination of that helps really provide more sleep. You can see, once you see the slide, there are bit.ly links around there to give you more information on how to set these up. Just for definition here, essentially a playbook is a rough guidance of what to do in a certain scenario, which is opposed to a run book, which is kind of a rigid, predefined actions to take when a certain scenario happens. An example of a playbook here, this is a pretty bare bones basic playbook, but the idea here is you have a playbook. This one is particularly created in Markdown. And the idea of that is you put this into your code repository as well. And then in the future, if someone adds something new to your application, you need to see that maybe should your code line failed build, if someone hasn't touched the playbook when a certain big change has occurred. So just something to think about when creating your playbooks, not only what that playbook is, but how do you maintain and keep it updated. Information over here, and also how to run a game day as well. These can be a lot of fun and also help with incidents whenever those do happen. We have the well-architected labs link over here, just in case you want to find out more information on any of these or actually play around with those labs. Recommend doing that. Take a little bit of time of your day, but it'll also walk you through some of those different aspects of the security pillar, and then just let you see that in real time. Okay, the next section over here is infrastructure protection. So this is a key part of the information security program. It ensures that systems and services within your workload are protected against unintended and unauthorized access and potential vulnerabilities. The service I wanted to talk about over here was is a web application firewall. So this is the web application firewall over here. It's an application layer firewall used to protect web assets from various forms of attack. You can think of it as a server plugin or filter that applies to a set of rules of HTTP traffic. Another way to look at it is just a web security service providing protection by monitoring HTTP requests, and restricting access to web applications. A little more info on this. You can create custom rules that block or allow requests based on IP addresses, those HTTP headers, or a combo of both. You can also block common types of security risks like SQL injections or cross-site scripting. It also gives the ability to actively monitor and tune as well. The last component here, that data protection component for the security pillar here, basically, before architecting any workload, foundational practices in security should be put in place that protect your data. And there are 3 different ways: protecting data at rest, in transit, and also by classifying that data. So let's take a look a little bit more deeper into this. Basically over here, eliminate data completely if there's no need for it. Do not store it. Really think if that data needs to be stored, and if it does, who specifically needs access to it. The idea here is you want to use the principle of least privilege. The second aspect here, there's 3. First, tokenization. It's a process that allows you to define a token to represent an otherwise sensitive piece of information. So for example, a token to represent a customer's credit card number. A token should be something that's meaningless on its own and can't be derived from the data it's tokenizing. Another aspect here for protecting your data is encryption. It basically just transforms that data to make it unreadable without a specific secret key necessary to decrypt that content back into plain text. And then also isolation. So we can use different AWS accounts to store different classes of data. For example, if one account needs to store only HIPAA compliant information, you can just make sure that you separate that with account isolation. Tooling to eliminate direct access. So for example here, you can take advantage of System Manager instead of using SSH. This can do things like take advantage of IAM to control which individual users or groups in your organization can access certain instances. And then last, try to do operations infrastructure as code, just to make sure to keep things consistent and so you don't introduce new errors as well. Some applications here, you can by default set, you can specify that you want all newly created EBS volumes to be in encrypted form. That, and then lastly over here, in the last portion of this, take advantage of our AWS well-architected tool as well. So you can define your workloads over here using the tools, and you can access the tools in the AWS console. And then from there, follow those questions in the well-architected framework and see how it compares in terms of best practices. So that is the last section over here, everyone. Some links. Again, you can take advantage of the well-architected framework links over here. You can take a look at the labs and take a look at some other solutions that we have over here, guys. Thank you. Any questions, you can email me, kbatra@amazon.com. The other thing I wanted to just mention that I will send, this is not so much, but it's like a 3/4 shortened version of a larger presentation. So I will post links after this in the meetup group for that larger presentation as well, just in case you want to dive deeper into some of those other services that I showcased in one of those earlier slides for each one of those components of the security pillar.
You knew I was about to ask you for that, didn't you?
Of course.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So I'll post that in the links for that once you get those to me, Kunal. I'll post them in the YouTube video as well, so that it'll all sync together, and then I'll post it in the Slack channel as well. Perfectly, will do. And then should I just mention what the little Oprah moment's going to be? Mr. Planky, are you ready?
Oh yeah, I said at the beginning of this, all of my responsibilities are off. Go for it, Oprah. You can go ahead and share the findings.
All right, so how many people do we have here in the 15, or is it more like, let me stop sharing my screen.